beautifully dressed. The role of a family star was to keep up appearances. Radmilla cued a soundtrack and made her entrance.
It's so good to see you.
You too, said Uncle. Toddy owned a host of pretty knickknacks. Fat jets, hobbyets, objects, all for awards, of course. Calculations, mementos, and the 20th century modern director see her investors will truly hate this Miller.
Okay, I'll do that. What's our game plan?
Uncle Jack pointed skyward with his elegant ivory wand. But Miller was incredulous.
We launch her into outer space?
Plenty of room up in Millionaire. Uncle Jack nodded. That's the family's attic. At least it's way, way out of California legal jurisdiction. That was always the best thing about those schools. Such events had certainly been known after. Jack knew about that, and she knew about that. Adults didn't have to linger over the details. It was disconcerting. The consequences of a tangled legal, ethical, social system of dealing with catastrophe. That was the true genius of the dispensation. They weren't exactly revolutionaries. They always had some grand plan shuffled from the bottom. Fred Miller dodged a robot with a socketed tray of stray objects.
What will the investors make of the prognosis?
Stars don't die easy, but the woman did die.
She doesn't look very dead this morning. The brain is just another organ, isn't it? There must be some kind of investment plan for us there.
Said Uncle Jack. We could waste an incredible amount of our family capital trying to revive our organization. Or we could invest that same amount of money into you. Or life, or best of all, into little Mary. What course of action has the best long-term return for our family? We have to think in the long term. That is our core family values. So we stick by our core values now. We've got to cut and run on Toddy. He's become a sinner. We've got to get those nuggets to weed out the monsters.
I would never ask the family to do that for me.
Well, it's time for you to ask for that. No, more than that. You're a big, grown-up girl now, Eva. It's time for you to bite off a chunk and just tell those sons of bitches who the star is. You have to do that for us. You're the family's biggest star now. Nobody else will be able to ask you that. And with that stick with our investors.
That sounds so selfish of me.
It's not selfish, it's what? Toddy always